Hello and welcome to our 8th session in this modifier section, and we are working in this deform category of modifiers, and the second deform category modifier that we are going to study today is the cast modifier. So to understand this, I will come into Blender and I am seeing the default cube here. I will first select the cube, press tab and come into the edit mode, and then I will right click and choose subdivide. And here in the subdivide levels, I am going to subdivide it by around 6 levels. So I have more vertices to play with. Then I will press tab, and for this cube now I will come over here in the outliner, and this collection I am going to call this as cost example, and for this cube I am going to call this as cast cube, and also I will open it and I am going to call this as cast cube underscore mesh. And now for this cast cube I will come into the and in the add modifier deform section, now I am going to come here and add the cast modifier. And as soon as I add the cast modifier, you can see the shape of my cube. So this has changed, it has become bulgy. And now if I come here and set the value of this factor to exactly 1, you can now see my cube has got converted into an exact sphere. So I have made my cube look like a sphere. I can right click and choose shade auto smooth, and you can see now I have a perfect sphere here. Now if you come over here in the cast, the first option is the shape. Right now the shape I am using here is the sphere. If you open it, the second option you have is the cylinder. So now my cube has got converted into cylinder when the factor value is 1, and the third option I have is the cuboid. Now in cuboid you are not going to see any change as of now, because the original object that I have used itself is a cube. So now I will come back to sphere here, and the next option you have is the axis. So x, y, z axis. So you will switch off all the 3 axes, then you have no effect of this. And if I click on x axis, you can now see that this bulging is happening only along the x axis. If I enable x and y axis, this is going to happen only along the x and y axis. If I switch off y and enable z, this will happen only along the x and z axis. So if I enable all the 3, this will look like a sphere. Now apart from this, in the factor I can move it left to make it look like this. See, now you are seeing this like this. When the factor moves negative, you will see something like this, and when the factor moves positive beyond 1, see, this will split into balloons like this and move like this. So this is the effect of this factor on this. So I will set this back to 1. The radius and size doesn't matter. So right now if you change it, there will be no changes in this model. Now the other option you have is the vertex group and the object. Now in this case, say for example I will press shift A and I am going to add one empty plane axis, and I am going to come here and call this as cast controller. And now I will select my cube, cast cube, and I will come over here, and in the object I am now going to choose this cast controller empty. Now I will come back here, select the cast controller, and if I now press GX and if I move it, as I move it, you can see how the effect of the cast is going to change as I move this controller. So I will press GX and I will move it along the G, and as I move it, you can see how this is going to behave. See, as I move it, you can see the effect. And actually what we can do is, I can create some kind of animation here. So I will come into this animation tab, and I will select this cast controller, press GX, and I will place it somewhere at a position here. I will press N, and here in the location I will set Y and Z value to 0, and along the X I will move it by around 1.5, and I will add one keyframe here, and then I will move this to around frame number, say for example 50, and I will select this and I am going to press GX and I will move it back, and as I move it back you can see how it is changing. So say for example I will move it to a distance of about 4 here, and I will add one more keyframe here, and I will come to frame number 100 and I will copy the keyframe that I have at 0, I will copy it and I will paste it here, and I will set this range of animation from 0 to 100. And now if I rewind this and if I play this, you can see how this casting is creating an animation like this. So we can create these kind of animations using an external controller. And this is one of the example for the cast controller. I will stop it and I am going to show you one more example. For that I will rewind this and I will come back to frame number 1, and here in the outliner I will close this entire collection, and in the scene collection I will right click and add a new collection, and I am going to call this new collection now as inflating underscore pipe. And then I will switch off this cast example collection completely, and in this inflating pipe now I will press Shift A, and in the mesh I am now going to add a cylinder. Now I will press numpad 1 and come into the front view, press tab and come into the edit mode, then I will press R and along the Y axis I will rotate it by 90 degree, and then I will press scale and along the X axis I will scale it out a long pipe like this, and then I will press Ctrl R and I am going to add some loop cuts here. Say for example I will click once and then right click, and here I am going to add some, say for example around 15 loop cuts. Then I am going to turn here and I will come into the face selection by pressing 3 line, and then I will select this face and this face both, and I am going to press I and I will create an inset like this, and after that I am now going to press X and I am going to delete the faces. Then I will come into the edge selection mode and I will alt click on this edge, and with Shift Alt I will select this edge, and then I will come into the edge and choose bridge edge loop, so that now I have the inner surface is totally connected. Come here and name this cylinder as inflating pipe, and then I am press tab and come into the object mode. I will press numpad 1 and come into the front view, press Shift A, and in the mesh now I am going to add a UV sphere. I will press numpad 3, I will come into the side view and I will scale it down so that it fits exactly inside this like this. So once I have added this like this, next I will press numpad 1. I am going to select this sphere and I am going to call this as inflate ball, and then I am going to press GX and I will move it along the X axis somewhere here to around -10 along the X axis, and then I am going to press I here and add one keyframe at frame number 1. I will come to frame number 100 now, and I am going to select this, press GX, and I am going to move it on the other side to frame 10, and I will press I and add a keyframe. So I am going to move it from -10 to +10 like this. So now this ball is moving from left to right like this, from -10 to +10. So I have this animation playing. Okay, so now we will stop the animation, rewind it, and now I am going to select my inflating pipe. Then in the add modifier I will come here, and in the deform I am going to add the cast modifier. And once I add the cast modifier here, now immediately you can see this has got bloated up, and by using the factor here I can control this, I can make the changes to this. See, and if I type 1, this will become an exact sphere like this. See, now this entire thing has changed like this. So right now here what I will do is I will set the factor to something like 0.3, and then also I will right click and choose shade auto smooth, and next I am going here and in the object now I am going to click here and I am going to select inflate ball. Now when I select the inflate ball as the object here, and if I rewind this and if I play it, you can now see as the ball is moving, you can see how the pipe is behaving. See, you can see how this movement is changing as the ball is moving. See, you can see the changes. So, right now you are seeing these changes in the sphere mode. Now, if I stop the playback, if I change it from sphere to cylinder, now if I rewind and play it, you can see how the deformation happens in case of the cylinder mode. See, you are getting this effect. Then I will rewind it back, and instead of cylinder I am going to use cuboid, and then I will rewind it, and if I play it, this will now take the shape of a cube. So, like this is going to take the shape of a cube. So, now I will come back here and choose sphere, and for the next user case example, I will come into this scene collection, right click, and I am going to create a new collection, and I am now going to call this as bouncing ball. I will switch off this inflating pipe, and in the bouncing ball I will come here, press numpad 1, I will press shift A, and in the mesh I am going to now add a plane. So, I have just added a plane, and I will make this plane a size of around 4 meters, and I will press tab, and I will right click, and I am going to add subdivide, and I will add some approximately 20 subdivisions to add more vertices. Then I will press tab here, and I will come here and call this plane as rubber cloth. Next I am going to press shift A, and in the mesh I am now going to add a UV sphere, and I will set its radius to around approximately 0.3 meters, and then I am going to press numpad 1, come in the front view, press GZ, and I will move it to the top. I will press N, and here in the item I am going to set its height to around 3 meters here, and then I will open the animation. I am in frame number 1, and I am going to add a keyframe here, and then I will come to frame number 50 now, and at frame number 50 I will zoom in, press GZ, and bring it to the center, and I will set the Z value to 0, and I am going to add one keyframe, again pressing I. Then I will select the first keyframe here, I will press Ctrl C and copy it. I will now come to frame number 100, and I am going to paste it. So, now if I rewind and play this, you can now see that the ball is pitching and going back. So, it is coming and pitching on here, and now in this case I will stop the playback, rewind it, and I am going to select this plane, that is the rubber cloth, and I will come into the modifier, and in the add modifier I will come into deform, and I will add the cast modifier. Come in the object, and I am now going to choose this sphere, and I am going to call this sphere, I will give it the name as bouncing ball. And then if I now rewind and play it, you can see how this is coming and how this is changing. Now I will stop the playback, I will select this plane, I will come into add modifier, and in the generate I will add subdivision surface, and I will increase it to 2 levels, and I will right click and also add shade auto smooth. So, now if I rewind and if I play it, you can now see how the ball, as it touches, you can see how the ripple is being created. The action is not correct. As the ball is here, you are seeing the ripple. This I need it to happen at frame number 50. I will rewind and come to frame number 1, and I will press shift A, and I am going to add an empty plane axis, and I am going to call this as bounce underscore controller. And now I will select this plane, that is the rubber cloth, and now I will come into this casting, and here I will delete this bouncing ball, and instead of that I am now going to add this bounce controller. And then here, now if I come and select the bounce controller, and if I press GZ and move it, as I move it, you can see how this ripple is going to change. See, this is going to make these changes. As I move this effect is changing. So, now I have to animate this based on the ball movement. So, at frame number 1, I will leave it at 0, 0, 0, 0, and I will press I and add a keyframe. And at frame number 50, I am going to press GZ, and I will slightly move it up like this. I will move it up like this, so that as the ball is moving, I will press GZ, and I will create a slight movement here, so that it is just rippling like this here, and I will move it by around 0.2, and then I will add a keyframe. Then I will come to frame number 100, I will select frame number 0 keyframe, copy and paste it. And again now if I rewind and play it, see now the action is okay, but the ripple is creating when the ball is in the air itself, and also the ripple is too much. I will come into frame number 50 now, and here I will select this rubber cloth, and in the factor I am going to slightly change this factor so that I will make it something like 0.2, or I will make this approximately 0.3. So this is fine. So when the ball is just touching, I can create this. I will select the ball, and at frame 50 I will press GZ and I will slightly move it down so that it is touching the surface like this. So it is just touching the surface like this. So I will press GZ and adjust the position, and I will add a new keyframe now. So this is fine, but only thing is this should happen when the ball just touches here. I will now select bounce controller. I will come here and move to frame number 40. I will select the keyframe which is at frame 0, press G, and I will move it to frame 40 here. And similarly I will come to frame 60, and I will select this keyframe which is at 100, press G, and I will move it to this 60. And now if I rewind and if I play this, you can now see that the ripple is created very well. We can create a bouncing ball effect like this using the cast modifier. So now I will stop the playback, I will rewind it, and I will come here and close this collection. And one last thing I want to show you is the vertex group. So how we can control this cast modifier using the vertex group. For that, in the scene collection, I will right click and create a new collection, and I am going to call this collection as vertex group. And then I am going to switch off this bouncing ball now, and then in the vertex group I will press Shift A, and I am now going to add one UV sphere. I will press numpad 1, and I will come here, and I have the UV sphere here. And right now for this UV sphere I will come into modifier, and in the add modifier deform I am going to add the cast modifier, and in here instead of sphere I am now going to add a cuboid. So I am giving the effect of a cuboid here. So now if I set the value to 1, this sphere will get converted exactly into a cuboid like this. I will come into this vertex group, I will call this sphere as vertex sphere, and then I will press Shift A, and I am going to add an empty plane axis, and I am going to call this as vertex underscore controller, and then I am now going to select my vertex sphere, and in this cast controller in the object I am now going to choose this vertex controller. And now if I select this vertex controller, and if I move G and if I move it, you can see how this is affecting our sphere. See how the effect is affecting the sphere. You can see this. However, I doesn't want this effect to apply or affect my entire cube like this. So for that, what I will do is I will select the vertex sphere, temporarily switch off this cast modifier. I will select this vertex sphere, and I will come into this data modifier, and here I am going to select it, press tab, and then I am going to come into the face selection mode, and I am going to select only a few faces over here. So I will select one, and I will press Control and select till here, then I will press Control and select till here, Control and select till here, Control and click here, Control and click here, Control click here, Control click here, Control click here, Control click here, and Control click here. So I have selected some of the faces like this, and I will come into vertex selection mode now, and in the vertex group now I am going to press plus, and I am going to call this as the control group, and I am going to click on assign with the value set to 1. So I have assigned this to this, and now if I press tab, and now if I come over to the modifier, and if I switch on this cast controller, And now here in the vertex group, I can click here and choose this control group. So when I select this control group now, and if I now set this ratio a little less, say for example I will set this for about 0.3, and now if I select this vertex controller and if I make the movement, you can now see that only the selected vertices are getting affected and the other vertices are not affected. You can now see how only the selected vertices is getting affected by this movement. See, as I move this, so I can select this sphere, right click and choose shade auto smooth, and now you can see how when I use this vertex controller and when I move this, only the selected faces are getting affected. So now I will close this. So these are the few examples of the use of this cast modifier. I will come into file and I will come into save as, and in my 4_modifiers folder I will give it the name as 4_8 casting examples.blend, and I am going to click on the save button. We have explored the features of cast modifier and the use cases where we can actually use this modifier. So in the next session we are going to work on another most important deform modifier, and that is the curve modifier.